everybody. My name is Adwita and I am an undergrad at Netaji Subhas University of Technology in New Delhi, India. And I, along with Krish, will be presenting our research paper, Sentiment Analysis of Social Media Data on COVID-19 today. So, talking about the research problem, during the COVID pandemic, we all have noticed how people have been confined to their homes. And this has resulted in people resorting to social media to express whatever thoughts and opinions that they could have. So, in this study, we wanted to analyze what sort of impact does the COVID-19 pandemic have on people, and we wanted to perform sentiment analysis of the data that we collected from two popular social media platforms, which are Twitter and Reddit. So whatever data we collected, we first pre-processed it, and we'll discuss those methods as well. And we performed our analysis using two unsupervised methods, Vader and Explore. We also, along with this sentiment analysis, performed a time-based analysis as well as a geographical analysis. So, talking about what sentiment analysis is, it's a very broad field where we want to analyze what is the opinion of people, what is their emotion or what is their attitude towards topics or whatever entities are being talked about in a given piece of text. And this has applications in various fields. So we can compare, we can assess what consumers are thinking about a certain product, or we can also apply this in politics and stock markets. And we've chosen social media because with the age of the internet, it has become the social media platforms have become a very popular source for people to share their opinions through text. So the two most popular methods for performing sentiment analysis have been machine learning methods and lexicon based methods. So machine learning methods are where we employ methods on labeled data to learn from the data, and lexicon methods where we rely on a predefined dictionary of words which are mapped to their related sentiments. So talking about the tools that we used Vader. So Vader is a lexicon which was specially fine-tuned for social media. So, and it has shown to perform very well on data which has been taken from social media like Twitter and Reddit, which we are using in the study. Another very popular library is TextBlock, which has a lot of NLP tasks like POS tagging and sentiment analysis, tokenization. And what TextBlock returns is a score which is a subjectivity and a polarity score. And what Vader returns is a compound score, um, uh, which is a compound score, which is basically a combination of the negative and positive sentiments. Moving on to the data set, for the Twitter data, we used the official Twitter API, and we used these hashtags, which are coronavirus, COVID-19, lockdown, quarantine, and the variants, Omicron, Delta variant, and the pandemic. And we extracted about 50,000 English and 10,000 multilingual tweets. Similarly, for Reddit, we used the pushshift.io API for the following keywords: isolation, coronavirus, quarantine, Omicron, Delta variant, COVID, and lockdown. And we chose the r/coronavirus and r/health subreddits, and we extracted about 42,000 Reddit comments. Um, Moving on to how we pre-process the data. So we employed some basic methods. We converted the text to lowercase, removed URLs. Uh, we also converted the emojis and emoticons. For example, how we changed this to happy or smiley face. We also removed stop words, tokenized the text, and performed POS tagging as well as lemmatization. We also took care of text which was not in English. So we had used the Google Translate API to translate non-English text to English to be able to understand it better. Moving on to the results, I'll be talking about Twitter. So here are the word clouds that we obtained for Twitter. And if we see the negative word cloud, we do see words like death and worry and these sort of words which we do expect to see having a negative sentiment. For the positive word cloud, there is an interesting observation that we made with words like positive and positivity. If we don't look at these words from a COVID context, then they do have a positive sentiment. However, in a COVID related context, these words mean how many people have been diagnosed with COVID, and that does not necessarily have a positive sentiment. So, this highlights how we need to have a context sensitive analysis. So this is the sentiment and polarity distribution. On the left, we can see the subjectivity versus polarity scatter plot. And we tend to see that most of the data lies between the zero point 0.4 to minus zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.4. And we can also make the analysis that text which is more polar also tends to be more subjective in nature, and text which is less polar tends to be more neutral in nature when it comes to subjectivity. As for the number of tweets that we obtained having these scores, we can see that there is a large amount of positive as well as negative tweets. And we also notice that text blob tends to um, classify tweets as positive or neutral as more than negative. So that's one observation that we had made. Talking about the location analysis, so Twitter allows people, allows users to have basically a string as their location. So we use named entity recognition to extract the location from these location strings, and we can see the distribution of those locations on this map here. So there are major hotspots that we obtained. We can see that there's America, there's Canada, India, the UK, Mexico, and Venezuela. So here is the distribution of sentiments for these major hotspots. And we can see that sentiment distribution in the United States, Canada, France, and Germany tend to have a higher number of negative sentiments as compared to the United Kingdom, India, Mexico, and Venezuela. One of the reasons we can see why there are a high number of negative sentiments in developed countries, and this is probably because of the growing concern over the different variants of COVID. So during the time that we had extracted this data, the Delta variant and the Omicron variant were uh, being discussed a lot in news media as well, and there was this hesitancy, and there was a skepticism on how well the vaccines that had been rolled out in these countries, how well would they work against these variants. So there was also a general hesitancy towards vaccines in these countries as well. In developing countries like India, we do see a lot of positive sentiments, which could be in response to the arrival of vaccines, as well as the ease of lockdown. So the general positive sentiment could be attributed to that. And India especially shows a higher number of positive sentiments, which could be in part due to the successful inoculation drive, and as well as the reopening of public places. In Canada, there is a surprising, overwhelming negative sentiment, which could be a response to the government of Canada's very strict mandate on COVID, which included a full vaccination for truck drivers, which had resulted in a protest convoy as well as blockades. So I would like to now call Krish to explain the results obtained for Reddit.
Hello. Yeah. So about the Reddit data set that we collected the Reddit data set scraping from two subreddits which were related to coronavirus and general health subreddit, from which we used our general keywords to find out which posts were related to coronavirus and the pandemic during this period. So the posts and comments that we collected from Reddit ranged from dates from 21st Jan 2020 to around 19th May 2022. So one interesting observation that we made about the negative and positive word clouds in Reddit compared to, say, the word clouds in Twitter was that they tended to contain more neutral words that didn't necessarily connotate either a positive or a negative sentiment. The main reason for this was that on examination of the posts that we collected, we saw that most of them were general news posts that had references to COVID instead of really being COVID focused posts. And even if they were really COVID focused, they were more objective in nature rather than being, say, kind of like a subjective post on how the pandemic is affecting them. They were more of a news-based post on how the pandemic is going around in the world. So next we did a time-based analysis of the results connected from Reddit on both the Vader and the, sorry, Advita, can you move the slide forward? Yeah. So we did a time series analysis for both TextBlob and Vader and how their results varied. So another interesting observation that we saw between the two methods that we used was that Vader tended to uh, either have very neutral sentiments or it tended to have negative sentiments, and TextBlob was mostly varied in the positive region. Also, sometimes, except for the neutral regions, as you can see here, they tend to move in opposite directions. So when there's a dip in Vader, at February 2020, there was a similar peak in TextBlob during the 2020 February 2020 month at the same time. So yeah, can you move to the next slide, Abdullah? Yeah, so we saw that 2021 in both the Vader and the TextBlob analysis showed that start of 2021 had a very sharp increase in positive sentiment. Uh, During these months, so around December to January 2020, December 2020 to January 2021, we saw that most of the countries were relaxing lockdowns and vaccination drives were beginning to take shape in most countries. And hence, sentiments regarding COVID were increasing during this period. This was followed by a sharp decrease in both Vader and TextBlob in March and April. So this was the period where the second wave of COVID happened and occurred in many different countries, which hit most countries harder than the first wave did. After this period of March and April 2021, for the entire 2021 period and the 2022 period till which we collected the data, it showed that the sentiment had little variability, which showed that the COVID pandemic was easing up, and in people's mind, it was becoming more of a story to tell in a more neutral light than a positive or a negative way. Also, we saw, as I said, TextBlob was more likely to classify comments as positive, while Vader was more likely to treat those as negative, and they often differed in their results. So, while TextBlob said that a certain period was more positive, Vader always, or most of the time, connotated the opposite. Yeah. Next slide. Right. In conclusion, we had a problem of the task that we set out was figuring out the emotions that the users were expressing related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the various topics associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, the vaccines, the lockdowns, etc. That and what kind of emotions were the users expressing on social media, since social media is such a popular platform for expressing emotions right now. So our task was to figure out how the pandemic affected the sentiments of people all around the world. We collected tweets in multiple languages and we translated them and analyzed them and did time-based analysis and as well as spatial analysis to see how COVID-19 sentiments varied over time as well as around geographical regions. So this work was mostly focused around unsupervised methods. This was due to the fact that social media data is unlabeled most of the time, and the data set we collected was large enough that it wasn't really feasible for us to manually label it. So we preferred using the unsupervised methods and focusing on how the sentiments varied across time and space. In future, we think verifying the accuracy of these systems, the Veda system and the text block system that we did, could be done by also adding a supervised learning model to the analysis as well by doing, say, self-supervised learning or either semi-supervised learning by partially labeling the dataset. Uh, also, these lexicon-based analyzers are usually general purpose tools. So they have a dictionary of words and they use that dictionary to specify sentiments in, say, some data. And so we wanted that if in future we decide to build a supervised learning model to do the same analysis, we would uh, probably make it more uh, explicitly geared towards analyzing sentiments of social media data. Right. Okay. Yeah. So we are now open for any questions if there are.